when we talk about the hedge funds, we perceive that hedge fund would be some kind of volatility, capture and things like that to gain some returns and give it back to the investors and things like that. So, is it too risky for investors to invest in hedge funds?
Well, don't forget that some hedge funds are extremely low volatility. So,
there is.
Sure. I mean, the spectrum of risk within the hedge fund industry is as wide as the spectrum of risk within all asset classes.
Okay.
So you have some extremely volatile hedge fund managers. You also have some hedge fund managers that they look like bond portfolios because extremely low levels of volatility.
Right.
I think that what's interesting about hedge funds is that the manager in question has much greater control over what the volatility that they deliver is through the instruments that they use, through the absence or presence of leverage and so on. So I think what you'll find with hedge funds is that the level of volatility that they've shown in the past is a very good indicator of what their volatility will be in the future.
Okay.
So they tend not to suffer from very drastic changes in the levels of their volatility, unlike many other investments, like, for example, equity investments.
What about in terms of the regulations? Are they properly regulated?
Hedge funds in general?
Right.
It depends on the country. I think that, for example, in the United States, in my opinion, pre-2008, there wasn't enough regulation in hedge funds. And whereas in Europe and Australia and various other places, there was very good regulation of hedge funds. See, for a long time in America, hedge funds were just viewed as private partnerships, and so beyond the purview of regulators. I think the systematic risk, or rather the systemic risk that they pose, has been recognized since 2008. So now a lot of the Dodd-Frank regulation and various other legislation that's been passed means that regulation of hedge funds clearly has stepped up in the United States, and I think that's for the better. I'm a big believer in regulation. I think regulation is a very important tool. I think that industry has to accept that they must work with regulators rather than working against them. All of us in this industry, we want ourselves to be represented correctly and fairly, and I think that regulation is a very important tool to deliver on that goal.
Right, but during the past, some of the hedge funds, has damaged a lot in terms of investors' confidence.
Sure.
So, what could be, investors could notice or could analyze whether hedge funds, in particular, would be suitable for them and would be, properly regulated, if you say.
Well, that's a very interesting point. I guess that the point I would make is that every time over the last 30 or 40 years that a plane has crashed, the regulation of airlines has improved a little bit. It's a sad failing of human beings that we tend to only react after the fact. I think the hedge fund industry is no different in that, again, there should have been much more regulation of hedge funds pre-2008. The fact that so much regulation has come on since 2008, in my view, I think there's never been, hedge funds have never been safer from that point of view, although I don't like to use the word safe.
Right.
But certainly the regulation has never been better. I feel our industry has never been better represented from that point of view.
What about in terms of investment strategies at the moment? So which hedge funds that we should invest in, given all the investment environments that we see right now?
Sure. I think that certainly what's most attractive to us about any fund manager is not just the risk and the return, but also the correlation that they have, meaning how they wax and
diversify.
wane. Exactly. So how they behave, how they interact with equity markets. What we don't want is hedge funds that do exactly what equity markets do. There's no diversification there.
Right.
So a strategy like managed futures, for example, is very useful from that point of view. The correlation between managed futures and equity markets is extremely low. So that's very valuable to us. That means there's diversification that we can provide to our clients through that low correlation. So to me, I think a well-diversified alternative investment portfolio should start with managed futures. There should always be some managed futures as a linchpin of that portfolio.